For ocean swimmers and divers, it's a worst case scenario to find you are suddenly in the company of a shark. But that's what happened to two southeast divers over the weekend. Jason Wallace and Dan Brown were out diving for crayfish at Cape Banks near Carpenter Rocks on Saturday when they came across a great white shark. Now, they came into the studio yesterday to tell me about their close encounter. Dan was the first one here to speak, and he spots the shark first as he explains.
We'd probably gotten about 50 metres or so from the little ledge where we drop in to the depth. And I was swimming behind, probably about 10 metres behind Jace, and lower in the water column, a bit closer to the weeds, and he was much higher up towards the surface. And from my left, about 7 metres or so away from me, I saw a great white come out of the blue and rocket up towards where he was swimming, and did a very quick turn, very suddenly at the top, and that obscured my view because of bubbles and all sorts of mess that it made with the surface, and then I didn't see. And when the bubbles cleared, I couldn't see either of them anymore, and I thought that he had been taken, and I really thought I needed to get out of the water. I knew that we had swum past bommies, which are, what do we want to call them?
Well, like a pinnacle of reef and rock protruding out of the water on a low tide, which thankfully it was.
Yeah. Some of these bommies, you can get on top of them and you're almost out of the water. In this case, we were out of the water. And you can get a better vantage point to see a bit further out than you, definitely better than being in the water. And so I tried to make as quick a beeline as I could with that, constantly looking over my shoulder, naturally. And I could see Jace. One of those times before I wanted to get out, I wanted to see if he was okay. Fortunately, I did see him, and I got out, and I wanted to be able to see if the shark was swimming around us or around him, because he's a bit further out still. And then only 15 seconds later, Jace came up to the same bommy, which was handy.
Yeah, well, when did you first realise that there was a great white swimming right next to you, Jason?
And I feel sorry for Dan, because his perspective would have been absolutely terrifying of seeing this great white appearing to be in attack mode coming straight at me. And as I said, the visibility was really clear, so we could see what was going on. So I was oblivious. And then I turned to look back at Dan as I was in the lead, sort of navigating us out further beyond the reef. I was looking back regularly at Dan to check we were staying close enough together. Turned around expecting to see Dan, and instead I saw a large great white right at my shoulder, probably within 2 metres of my shoulder, and was just absolutely startled. And at this point, it had turned, so as Dan's explained, it appears that it was coming straight at me. At some point, it's decided to overshoot me to the side, thankfully.
Yes, very thankfully.
I'll never know why. It might have been that it saw that I wasn't a SEAL and had thought so from a distance. It might have seen that I had side-mounted scuba tanks, that it didn't know what those things were. Certainly if it had tried to take a bite of them, it would have got a rude surprise of metal rather than flesh.
Well, they do say it is often a case of mistaken identity with shark attacks, so it hopefully got the right look at you and realised it wasn't what it wanted,
no.
Which is good.
And it may be that it became aware that I'd become aware of it as I turned my head, but I feel it was coming more behind me than... So I don't know whether that's a factor. I know as a predator, it likes to sneak up, and if it knew I'd become aware of it, maybe it changed trajectory. But I'll never know what happened. All I know is I turned my head, and there it was right beside me. And as I looked at it, it kind of adjusted course at the same time. I could sort of feel this movement as I turned, and then I just watched in absolute awe as it continued to swim in the direction the trajectory I was going to take. It just continued swimming ahead, and in the clear viz, I watched it for quite a few seconds and could see the size of it and very clearly that there was no doubt what I was looking at and just thinking, wow, this is one of the most incredible creatures in the world that I've got this incredible view of. And then once it had continued really beyond sight, at least to a point where it was well away from me, probably 20 odd metres maybe, then I thought, I've got to get out of the water pronto, and felt completely vulnerable knowing that if it changed its mind, I had no chance of defending myself, and turned and first I dropped down to the bottom because I had been high in up near the surface. So I have a device around my butt that I have to pull on to deflate air to get down, and I sort of fumbled around with that for a few seconds and dropped down, and then saw the same bommy, not knowing it was the bommy Dan was on, but got over to that, clambered up the side of it pretty quick, and just as I got to the top I saw Dan's fin touching the water, and I thought, oh, thank goodness I've actually, one, come to the same bommy Dan has, two, he's out of the water, which means he's probably okay, but at this point I was still also wondering, is Dan all right? Did something happen before I've seen the shark? And thankfully when I got up onto that bommy, Dan and I just looked at each other with immense relief and thought, wow, we've both got all our limbs intact, we're both okay.
Were you even able to have a coherent conversation at that point, or were you just kind of looking at each other in absolute awe?
In awe, in kind of disbelief. If both of us hadn't seen it, we might not have believed it with our own eyes, really. It was incredible.
So how close exactly did it come to you, Jason? Do you know?
It's really hard to say because it was an instant, really, that it was at its closest. But I feel it was probably under 2 metres from me. It was extremely close. And, yeah, to turn expecting to see Dan and instead seeing that huge apex predator right beside me was quite startling. You ask what it was like when we saw each other. We were both... I certainly was whooping and laughing and thinking, my goodness. And then there was a moment of sort of comparing notes on that. Neither of us had any doubt what we'd seen, but to be able to confirm that with each other, that, yep, that was a large, medium-sized great white shark. They certainly can be bigger. And just startled that we'd seen it in that environment that we'd been in many times before. But, of course, now on the bommy, we were still in the water.
I was about to ask, you haven't really solved all the problems yet, have you? You're on the bommy. How long did you wait before you made the move back to the boat?
Oh, well, not to the boat, back to the reef. Would have only been a couple of minutes where we just, as you said, compared notes. It was just like, yep, that's definitely what we think it was, and we don't know what its intentions were or are, could be, and we don't know where it was. But the bommy is just... As Jace said, it's a pinnacle. It's just this little area, and we had to get back into the water to cross another body of water at depth to get to the rocks that we came in on.
Which is effectively the same part of the water where we'd just seen it.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So how was that just an instinct thing to get out of there, or did you really have to summon some courage to do that last swim?
For me, I wanted to get out of it as soon as possible. If it was hanging around, I wanted it to be more where it was rather than give it a chance to come back and have a look for us. So I just thought, let's just get into it and just get across and get out of the water. That was my main...
There were still some small seals hanging around too, so it was a small channel. We didn't have to go far, but we did have to get back in and into deep water again. So we sort of saw that, well, there's a couple of seals hanging around in this area that are also going to be a bit of a diversion, and they don't seem too fussed. So what we had to do is basically come straight down the ledge to the seabed, which wasn't particularly deep, but we didn't want to stay... The sharks tend to, from our understanding, attack from below, so we thought, well, if we get down on the base of the seabed, across there and then up the other side. Usually when you do that, when you get to the other side, you sort of take a bit of a breath before you drag yourself out completely, but I think we both kind of got out pretty quick when we had the opportunity.
Yeah. How far was it metres-wise to swim?
10 metres, the complete width of the water, and then sort of going down the side and up the other side. So it wasn't far at all.
That's still probably the fastest 10 metres you've ever swum, both of you?
Absolutely.
We did make sure we kept, calm, but we didn't mess around. When I say calm, of course, we were excited. But knowing that, we continued to observe around us and safely get in and out. And then we went for it. And then we still had quite a walk back along the reef where there's other little small pockets of water and things. So we sort of clambered away for a while. But at this stage, certainly felt, hey, we've just managed to escape something that quite easily could have gone the other way.
Yeah, absolutely. Both of you are qualified cave divers and ocean divers as well. it can be a risk anytime getting into ocean water, like it can be a risk. Cave diving, we know that as well. There had been a string of attacks in New South Wales. Had it entered your mind that you could see a shark that day?
Where we are is a very different habitat from there. But we are always cognizant that, especially there's a seal colony nearby. And these sharks exist, and it's always a possibility. It wasn't really more forefront to my mind, personally, because of the sharks. They're a different species of shark, and it's a very different habitat. But we're cognizant of probably the changes in the ocean around here and the changes the way that animals are acting. But this is just one of those areas where really the whole Southern Ocean, really, isn't it?
It is. It's an area. There's always, we know there's great whites in the ocean. There's certainly great whites in the ocean off the Limestone Coast, and I know quite a few lobster fishermen who have mentioned seeing them out there. So, yeah, to me, every time I get on the road in the car, I don't know if there's going to be a drunk driver or inattentive driver coming towards me. When I get in the ocean, I know there's a risk. There's numerous risks, and we do our best to manage them. But, yeah, once you've been that close to one, it is going to change my perspective going forward.
That was what I was about to ask. Obviously, that day you had to give up on finding some crays, but going forward, are you going to not go diving there anymore? Does it change how you feel about ocean diving?
It was a big surprise for me to see a great white of that size in that location. I always felt, because this was surrounded by reef and full of bommies and not open ocean, I guess I'd been kidding myself. I thought it was a reasonable expectation is you wouldn't have one moving through there, because it doesn't. It's quite an odd area. And also there's a lot of seals there, which I know attract sharks, but I thought if there was a shark in the area, the seals would probably be out of the water. Both of those things were proven untrue to me, so it's changed my understanding. I'll certainly dive in the ocean again, and partly why we felt this story, it's a great yarn, but we feel obliged to share what we've observed so that others can learn from that and make their own judgments on where they're going to enter the water, and to be aware that you can unexpectedly have a great white shark where you don't expect to see it, and people need to make their own judgments on how that affects their behaviour. They're always out there. I've surfed many times, I've dived many times and done that safely, and it's enriched my life greatly. I'll probably be a bit more focused on sinkholes and freshwater caves for some time, but I'll certainly be back in the ocean.
What about you, Dan?
I have other ocean dives booked already, and I'm very keen to get into it. I've always been aware that there's sharks, and we often see certain types of sharks, and they are no threat whatsoever. And you're almost hoping to see them, because you compare them with the other fish around, and they're sleek and they're beautiful to look at, and they're just absolute predators, and they're just so impressive. This hasn't really changed how I think about sharks. Definitely not at all. It was definitely a near miss, and we're very, very lucky, particularly Jace. But we know they're there, and if it wanted to do something, it would have done it. And so, in my mind, it sort of more shows that they're not mindless monsters that people can probably call them. It's just not true. They do what they've got to do, and generally they really cause no threat to us. But we should be very mindful that we're in their territory.
In that vein, was it actually quite interesting to see once you were out of the water and got your bearings back a little bit? Because not many people ever get to see a great white close in the wild.
We've both done hundreds of dives, ocean dives as well. I never expected to see one in an attack. That's really quite a haunting image that I replay. For Jace, that was kind of over at that point, and he just got to see this lovely animal next to him.
Yeah, I feel very privileged for two things. One, the fact that I'm still here to tell the story unharmed, and I know that I was completely vulnerable at that time, and if that shark had decided I was dinner, there was very little I would have been able to do about it. But I also feel privileged that I had this incredible experience of this up-close interaction with one of the world's most amazing creatures. I've thought about doing cage diving over in Port Lincoln to see the great whites. I feel like I don't need to. Yes, and the conditions were just incredible. It was crystal clear water, so you had this spectacular view, much closer than you would want. But hey, survived to tell the story, and to see that just swimming away from me out into the deeper water, that was just a spectacular sight. And you just see how powerful and incredible a creature it is, and it's just that unmistakable shape that we all are familiar with. So just incredible, and it is a privilege to see that. Certainly a privilege to survive it, knowing that it was up to the shark on that day, how that played out. I probably don't want to experience that again. I feel like you might get one lucky chance. I feel privileged to still be alive. But yeah, it's an amazing experience.
Southeast divers Dan Brown and Jason Wallace speaking there. They were in studio yesterday to recount that incredible story of an encounter with a great white shark off the waters near Carpenter Rocks.